In this video, I want to talk about some popular American podcasters or influencers and how they could be potentially amplified by foreign sources. Now, I'm going to show you how one particularly, this is Fuentes, how he is amplified by foreign sources clearly. And I think Jackson Hinkle, this is probably happening here. It might be happening with Candace Owen. I don't know. I can tell you that all three love authoritarians for some reason I can't quite understand, because they all claim to be from the political right and a conservative side. But Jackson Hinkle has described himself as a right-wing communist, so that's not really what it is. Fuentes, if you might not know who Nick Fuentes is, but if you don't like Trump, Fuentes is to Trump as Trump is to me. Like, I mean, he is so far different than what Trump is. He's so far worse in the ways of, he's America first, but he is like anti-Semitic and white nationalist, racist, and all kinds of other bad things. And then Candace Owens is kind of conspiracy theorist, and they all like Russia. They all don't like Ukraine. And so that's why I'm showing you this. Okay. And each scenario is going to be different. So I'm not saying that if this is happening to one, it is necessarily happening to another, but very well could be. So let's start here and look at this. This is Jackson Hinkle. Jackson Hinkle is all in on pro-Russia. He has 3.6 million followers. He loves Russia, loves Iran, supported Palestine. And I understand that there's a split between people who watch what's going on in Ukraine and care about Ukraine, and those that care, feel bad for Israel being attacked on October 7th or feel bad for the Palestinians. I get that. I'm just trying to give you some background. But he loves Iran, loves Russia, had a series of Russian girlfriends that probably were kind of steering him that direction. Okay. And he 3.6 million followers. How did he get this kind of rapid growth? Well, there's probably something going on behind the scenes with maybe some foreign influence. I can't prove that definitively, but I'll show you with Nick Fuentes what's going on, and then you can draw your own conclusions. Now, he has a mix of things like this. Breaking: Thomas Massie introduces a bill to remove the U.S. from NATO. That I just looking through his page just a few minutes ago, and this is true. So this is actually a true story, and Thomas Massie, who's very MAGA, had just put this bill through. Nothing will happen with it, I'm pretty sure. You'd have to get through all the Democrats and about half the Republicans in the Senate, who are still people like Republicans like me, old school conservatives, that would be like, what are you doing? And then he would put things that are, So this is true, putting this out here. And then this is kind of sketchy in the sense that he puts this out with these big buildings and other things, images in China, and says China is proof that communism works. Well, okay, the first thing that I would say if I was in class is, okay, so the communists have been able to do this. What else could they have done instead of what you see tangibly here in front of you with these directed projects, if the money went back to the people from which it came and they could decide what to do with it on their own? Like, that's the very first lesson you'd have in an economics class about this sort of thing. So okay, that's a little sketchy. You get an F for this, but okay, he's assuming certain things. And then he'll platform people that are going to make the kinds of points that are pro-Russian or pro-Iranian or whatever. And he gets a lot of traction for having done that. Does he get traction from loyal followers who actually believe this? I'm sure he does. But he also, I think, gets traction from elsewhere. And that's what brings us to Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes has only 1 million plus followers, but he's still a pretty large figure. And he has real loyal followers. And I'll talk about that in just, well, let's do this. They're called Groypers. Groypers, or the Groyper Army, are a far-right group loosely defined as followers, fans, or associates of the American white nationalist, so there's a racial component here, political commentator, activist, and live streamer Nick Fuentes. They are named after a variant of Pepe the Frog, the internet meme. Groypers have attempted to introduce their politics into mainstream conservatism in the United States by various means, but they're not conservatives like me, and I'm not picking a fight with them. I think that they're wrong-headed, just like I think maybe those on the left and the extreme woke left are wrong-headed. Same kind of thing. I think they're wrong-headed for certain reasons, and I'd be happy to sit down and have a conversation and that sort of thing. But these guys, they're different than what you think of when you think of the right wing. They're further beyond MAGA in their views. Okay. What was later dubbed the Groyper War began in the fall of 2019 when Fuentes launched a social media campaign targeting Turning Point USA's Culture War College Tour led by Charlie Kirk. So Charlie Kirk wasn't far out enough for them, so they decided that they were going to, from his right flank, they're going to attack him, even though they have some ideas that aren't even right in the conservative sense. They're further out in just the, well, you'll see what I'm saying in a moment here. A little bit further, white nationalism, anti-Semitism, social stances. Fuentes has said that he's been oppressed by the Jews and blamed the Jewish community for anti-Semitism. This led to big public break with Ben Shapiro. Tucker Carlson platformed him for some reason I don't quite understand. Like, yeah, come on in here. No, not having him on to have a conversation. But when I say platformed him, I mean they put him on so that he could spread his views rather than so they could have an intellectual conversation about it or, ask real journalistic kind of questions. Groypers blamed the mainstream conservative movement, that would be people like me that are mainstream conservatives, as well as the political left for what they view as destroying white America. Okay, so this is something out there. It's different, but it's a growing movement. They oppose immigration and globalization or globalism. Groypers support traditional values in Christianity, but they don't act like it. They say they support this thing. I'm a Christian. I'll be in church on Sunday, and I believe these kinds of things. Now they will say that they're supporting this, but then they'll hate their neighbor. And just because of race or because they're Jewish or because of whatever. And so it's a different kind of thing. Oppose feminism, LGBTQ rights, those kind of things. Okay, so there's more on about Groypers, and if you see Pepe the Fluff Frog, this is very often associated with Groypers. Now, let's look at Fuentes. Fuentes' rise was not organic. This is from Network Contagion Research Institute and talking about data Republican, small r. That means Republic, like supporting a Republic, not Republican Party like I talk about. Okay, Nick Fuentes' rise was not organic. Now, I'm not suggesting that I'm not suggesting that necessarily Candace Owens and Fuentes and Hinkle are all of the same ilk. I can only speak to what's going on with Fuentes here, but it's possible that something like this has happened as well. NCRI data shows that he directly cultivated and participated in coordinated raids that foreign engagement farms and anonymous accounts then amplified to distort his reach. Now, why would they do that? That's an interesting thing. We'll talk about that in just a moment. There is a real audience behind him. I believe that that's fair. There are real people who support him, but the scale you see online is a manufactured ecosystem, not genuine momentum, although genuine momentum is actually there. Okay, now here's Elon Musk talking about how he's a Fed. For context, it appears that when he has hidden a reply from the account of Nick Fuentes after accusing him of being a Fed, when filtering most liked replies, Fuentes' response did not appear. Context is relevant to help maintain X as a platform for open dissent, trolling or not. It says, okay, so yeah, let's just go on. NCRI's analysis, how abuse of X's platform boosted Nick Fuentes. A few days ago, Elon Musk got ratioed. Ratioed means that I got more comments on my side than you got by Nick Fuentes. And that's apparently a big thing if you're into social media wars, which I'm not. This is not something that I want to engage in or that sort of thing. I'm trying to help you understand what's going on because these three characters are very anti-Ukraine, very pro-Russia. This morning, Network Contagion Research Institute released a forensic breakdown of how Nick Fuentes' sudden rise over the past year was driven by synthetic amplification, foreign engagement clusters, and coordinated rapid behavior. I read the full report and asked NCRI some clarifying questions about their methodology. The findings are staggering. As always, patience as I pull this thread together. So here's the actual report, and here's a top-line claim that Fuentes' influence did not emerge entirely organically. I believe it's there. I believe there are people that really like him, want to follow him, believe in his cause, unfortunately. And so I'm not saying that. Instead, it was manufactured, but unusually fast, unusually concentrated, unusually foreign engagement patterns, the kind normally associated with coordinated manipulation networks. Okay. The data shows Fuentes receiving more early retweets than Elon Musk, despite Musk having literally 100 times the audience. In the first 30 minutes, Fuentes dominates velocity charts, and an anomaly no legitimate account in U.S. politics resembles. Okay, so Fuentes is here in red. And if you look at the charts, like Fuentes is he's just clobbering everybody else, as opposed to other people, including Elon Musk, in orange. Right? Look at the difference between his reach. Right? The contrast gets even more stark when normalizing for the number of followers. And that there's not even a contest here. Okay. NCRI then drilled down. 61% of all Fuentes' retweets in the first 30 minutes came from accounts that did this repeatedly across multiple posts. So probably some kind of bot farms or that sort of thing. Who are these early retweeters? According to the report, 92% are fully anonymous, no name, no photo, no location, no contact information, and most are single-purpose Groyper accounts with bios, banners, or posting histories dedicated to boosting Fuentes. So you have bot farms that are looking like they're his supporters. And it gets stronger. Fuentes' most viral posts are heavily retweeted by foreign accounts, including in India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Malaysia, and Indonesia. These countries have zero organic link to Fuentes' U.S.-centric identity politics. He really talks about like America first and all things internally to the United States primarily. They do match regions widely used for low-cost engagement farms, and that's probably what's at play here. Okay, now, why would this happen? If you read the Mueller report, this is CNN, this is the Mueller report, the report on investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. It wasn't so much that Russia was trying to elect Trump, but trying to sow discord in the United States. And so I'll show you what I mean by that in just a moment. Okay, let's go back to this. iBulk retweets, coordinated boost networks, inauthentic accounts, and synchronized amplification windows all violate X's platform manipulation and spam rules. NCRI explicitly notes that Fuentes' network fits every forbidden category. So you can't be doing these kind of things on X, although apparently he's doing these. Crucially, Fuentes isn't a passive beneficiary. He actively coordinates these raids. That's a pretty big charge. NCRI compiled hundreds of instances where Fuentes gives real-time commands like retweet this or everybody retweet her immediately after dropping a link in a chat. So, yeah, okay. But again, he has real followers as well. The report also highlights former insiders alleging that Fuentes inflated viewer metrics on his streaming infrastructure using multipliers and that he previously directed loyalists to perform coordinated online actions in private chats. Okay, when the synthetic engagement engine was accelerating, mainstream media began responding to manipulated visibility, trying to paint him as a new Charlie Kirk. Mainstream press mentions of Fuentes tripled after September 2025, and high status framing of him in articles rose by 59.6%. Again, here he's wearing a MAGA hat, but he's turned against Trump because Trump isn't radical enough in his estimation of what is going on. He's blaming Trump for being like legacy conservative, which he certainly is not. Okay, despite branding himself as America First, Fuentes repeatedly sides with foreign adversaries on state media, even during crises involving U.S. forces. He positions himself as a defender of Iran, of Russia, and even China over his own country. This is who is algorithmically elevated. Now, who would have an incentive to algorithmically elevate someone like a Fuentes or a Jackson Hinkle? And we'll look at others like Candace in just a moment. I'd like to acknowledge that Fuentes does tap into a real frustration. I think this is a fair acknowledgement. Fuentes does tap into a real frustration. There are real people who do follow him, and they follow him because they think he has answers. The videos do not entirely watch themselves. I think that's fair, but make no mistake, the rise is not organic. So it's not just organic. There's more than just organic. That's what we're trying to say. And the agenda is not America first. It is something, it's using America first in order to have a grievance culture that is going to blame the Jews and anyone who's not white and whatever else. It's really problematic. Now, he added this afterwards, after the thread, and said, talk with someone who has been infiltrating groypers, that is spending time with the groypers themselves, which is actually insightful. This is what he had to say. Also important to note, the presence of foreign amplification doesn't mean that he doesn't have a big, genuine fan base. I think that's a fair statement that needs to be understood. Short form explanation. First, he's one of the most misquoted, taken out of context people in media. Okay, I think, okay, that's fair. But even when he's properly quoted, he has some problematic things, and I'll show you that in a moment. He's the polar extreme in the opposite direction from cancel culture. That's correct. He does want to get out there and talk. He's not trying to cancel the other side. He's trying to say some pretty terrible things. Without the censorship and deplatforming of him from literally everywhere, he might have not have ended up so extreme. That's probably also fair. He's essentially been entirely alone, building his audience on Rumble for years. So he's not like just out of overnight sensation. He's been working at this for a long time. The results of some of the most polarized and siloed people on the internet. That's right. The result is some of the most polarized, siloed people on the internet who listen to him, who never see the other side. Their ideas were never really properly challenged, never given true pushback because no one saw them or even acknowledged his existence. Now that he has turned into the mainstream, he has spent the past 10 years honing his message into something that's translatable to a mass media audience. I'll tell you the problem. He's extremely good. He's very articulate. His points are actually true. The problem is that he arrives at them, where he arrives at them is rooted in the wrong direction. Right? Are there problems? Yes. Is he pointing out a legitimate problem? Yes. And then he says, well, what you actually see is the anti-Semitism. Look, Hitler made interesting arguments in the beginning, first 40 pages of Mein Kampf. I read it. And then he said, and it was because of the Jews, and it all went downhill from there. Right? He blamed all the problems on the Jews at about page 40. I might be a little bit off. It's been years since I read that for my master's thesis. Instead of saying the USA after the Cold War needed to control the Middle East, and we figured out how to do that by working with certain countries and destroying others. Whether or not that was a good decision or not, that there's still a decision the American government and ultimately the American citizens, as it's our country, and we're responsible for our own government. That would have been a fair argument. Instead, Nick says something like the Israelis and Jews of the world have conspired to control the American government so that they can dominate the Middle East. Very different talking points between this paragraph and that paragraph. Now the deal is, I refuse to believe after watching him do that for some time that he is stupid enough to think that's true. So the commentator here is saying that he doesn't even really believe it himself, but he's using this as a platform. He doesn't care which side wins, so long as it leads to the ultimate goal, which is a rise of a Caesar-type figure, some kind of strong man. If you spend your time talking about how Trump is some kind of fascist, I know that's very fashionable on the left side of the spectrum, and a lot of people are talking about that kind of thing. You haven't seen anything yet until you see someone like Fuentes. Okay, here's Fuentes with Piers Morgan. I apologize, Morgan's about to curse, but just listen to this 10-second clip.
You think Hitler was very fucking cool?
Yes, I do.
Hitler was cool. Yes, I do. That's what he says. Wow.
I'm tired of pretending he's not.
Well,
to be honest,
that's Fuentes. So if you haven't seen it before, now you have. Then there's someone like Candace Owens. She's not cut out of the same cloth. She is different. And I went back and I asked AI to explain the difference. Like, I was an elementary school kid. What's the difference between Jackson Hinkle and Nick Fuentes? Explain them as like just to an elementary school student. What Jackson Hinkle does, imagine a kid on a playground who loudly cheers for the bully and then tells everyone that the bully is actually the good guy. He supports Russia, makes people doubt trustworthy news sources. He speaks confidently even when he doesn't have good evidence. That's Jackson Hinkle. Okay, Nick Fuentes, what he does. Fuentes is like the kid on the playground who yells mean, hateful things about whole groups of people. He promotes racism and anti-Semitism and extreme politics. Then he tells his followers to fight against people that he doesn't like. He tries to look like the leader of a club that's built around being angry and blaming others. His words can make people feel unsafe. Okay, that's Fuentes. Now, Candace Owens, she's a little different. Candace Owens is like someone who likes being the center of attention and says bold things so that people will pay attention. She says things that are very sharp or controversial. She lives on controversy. She picks one side and ignores facts that don't support her side. This is a problem. You have to factor in facts that support the other side to have a clearer picture of what's going on. She sometimes spreads ideas around simple, but leave out important truths. Okay, so lots of people listen to her. So when she says things that aren't true, it can confuse millions of people. And it's important to understand these guys because when someone has a big megaphone, their words can help people or hurt people. They can spread misinformation, make people angry at each other, and encourage people to believe things that aren't even real. Okay, that's the problem here. And let's go back now with that in mind to Candace Owens. So Candace Owens, 7.5 million followers. She's probably the least crazy of the three. I mean, as far as like extreme kinds of statements, but she still is kind of, well, a little out there. Here she is talking, this is so dangerous. Candace Owens tells her large fan base filled with radicalized vigilantes, because like part of her shtick, part of the way that she operates is like she's deputizing her audience to be investigators, to find out the real truth about what's going on. And so that's how she interacts with her fan base. Okay. Candace Owens tells her large fan base filled with radicalized vigilantes and self-appointed intelligence officers that they should be deeply suspicious of Ukrainian refugees. Oh, okay. As they may be operating agents of French or Israeli intelligence. Again, she's also anti-Semitic as well. The Jews are the problem and so on and so forth. Let's just hear like 10, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe tops about what she's saying. Just listen.
Urging you to contact your authorities if you are hearing any sob stories from anyone about how they're coming in from Ukraine and that they're fleeing the war. Okay. I think you should contact the authorities immediately. We don't need to have a presence of Ukrainians that are quote unquote fleeing the war in Tennessee. And, you know, I trust the Tennesseans to get this done and to pay attention. And I want to say this, by the way, everywhere in America, I've heard there's a major influx of Ukrainians, quote unquote, fleeing that are building up in Washington. That is something to be worried about, you guys. That is
Oh boy. So see where I'm going with this? Now, who has a stake in that kind of thing? It's not just her. Now it is her, right? It's her because she's making money off of her influence, right? But it could also be nefarious foreign actors. This goes back to the Mueller report, and this is what Russia wants to do. I'm not saying that this is necessarily what's happening. I am saying that this is what Russia wants to do, and we saw it in the Mueller report. And initially, the Internet Research Agency, the IRA, remember Prigozhin? Okay. Internet Research Agency created social media accounts that pretended to be the personal accounts of U.S. persons. By early 2015, the IRA began to create larger social media groups or public social media pages that claimed falsely to be affiliated with U.S. political and grassroots organizations. In certain cases, the IRA created accounts that mimicked real U.S. organizations. For example, one IRA-controlled Twitter account at 10_GOP purported to be connected to the Tennessee Republican Party. More commonly, the IRA created accounts in the names of fictitious U.S. organizations and grassroots groups and used these accounts to pose as anti-immigration groups or Tea Party activists or Black Lives Matter protesters or other U.S. social and political activists. Now, what they were trying to do is who's radical on this side, who's radical on that side, let's be them and try to get at each other. Whether it's white nationalist or Black Lives Matter or whatever, that they're going to be at each other. Again, all that to say, these influencers, yes, they have a personal stake in what they're doing. They're making money doing this, but there are actors out there beyond them that have a stake in pushing them. And it's at least happening for Fuentes, apparently. And it could very well be happening for the others. Don't know, but it seems like it's very plausible. Tell me what you think about what you saw here. Put that in the comments below. I hope that helped you understand what's happening with these influencers, or what could be. We think about like Tim Pool, for example, as taking money directly or indirectly from the Russians. And I'm not saying that these guys are doing that, but it's plausible. Tell me what you think in the comments below. My shout out is to Ian Collins, a graduate Patreon member. Thank you, Ian, for your support. Thank the rest of you for your time staying with me all the way to this point. You're awesome. Thank you for the time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.